Hey everyone, this is a part 2 of the Q&A for celebrating strip number 500 of Probl-o-Matic, the strip formerly known as Bite Size. So you can check that out first if you want a little bit of continuity. These questions will focus a little more on characterization and where the story's going, I think. Part 3 should be up next week. And I hope you enjoy the footage of this particular one. Because I was kind of at a loss for what footage to put in the background, so I decided to just show people how I make coffee. And I will leave little instructions on the screen as you go in case you want to make some of your own. The basic trick is that I use a manual grinder to grind beans. And then I use a method called the manual pour method, in which you pour boiling water over the beans instead of a machine. Okay, now we're looking at episode 496. Jane and Company asks, where do you get inspiration for your characters? Each of them, I guess, fulfills a different role in the story. So Greg would be the main character type of hero that, at least initially, was somebody that readers could project themselves onto. He sort of had, if you could imagine a character with a mirror on his face. I know that sounds silly, but the idea is that a reader will be able to see themselves on him. So his personality is that he's kind of emo, kind of sensitive, kind of a dope. Kind of derpy, maybe, is a better word. But he's fun and cute, and we can feel like we are him. So in terms of Charlie Brown, he's that kind of character. Duncan is his lieutenant, let's say. His Linus. I get inspiration for these kinds of characters by reading other strips, of course, looking at stereotypes, archetypes, but also saying what kind of role can they play to make the story more interesting, or to bring out characteristics in already existing characters. The character that I'm the most interested in right now is Astrid, who's Xavier's little sister, who was introduced at strip 400 in a short story. At first, she was just another background character. The more I started, you get these strikes of inspiration. I'm sitting down one day and I'm writing strips. I'm thinking, there's a huge vacuum in the strip for, let's say, a teenage girl reader. And I know that on Webtoon there's a lot of teenage girl readers. There should be a character that they are able to say, oh, that's me. Or, oh, she has my problems. So there are things that can and will happen to Astrid that do not happen to Greg. They can't happen to Greg, because he's a boy who's older. He's not in school, let's say. I think one of the questions is, how old are all these characters? And the answer to that is, they are as old as you imagine them to be, and that's by design. So Astrid is in school. None of the other characters are in school. So I think Astrid is really important for anyone reading who is in school. I want them to be able to relate. So each of the characters has an inspiration, not from someone in real life necessarily, although I do draw from my own relationships sometimes. I've had a bunch of friends in real life who are like Duncan, let's say, who are really loyal and fun and excellent people that you just want to be around them all the time. So I draw a little bit from everybody I know. And I've joked before that I'm more like Xavier than Greg. But I try to think not only in terms of real life inspiration, because I don't want to be the kind of writer who is writing about his personal life solely because it gives me some kind of satisfaction as a person. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to write about this person because they hurt my feelings or something. No. Really, this is a story. So it's good to draw from real life to make the story more rich, but that's secondary to the goals of the story, if that makes sense. So the goal of each character is to fulfill a certain role that's missing in this series. Xavier is the really aggressive, choleric, nasty kind of character who says whatever she thinks, even if she's wrong. Duncan is sort of a support character, but he's such a support character that he's like the cleanest, most innocent-hearted character. Francine is actually really complex, and there's so much I want to do with her, but we're not there yet. I can't say too much. So yeah, it's just down the list, there's so many characters and roles that I want to fulfill. I know it sounds more complicated than it actually is. 500 strips is actually not that much. But the idea is that each character is able to drive the story forward and make it more complex. Anyway, I don't want to say too much. Okay. Justine Morton asks, what inspired you to change Xavier from being imaginary to being real? In fact, why was she imaginary in the first place? This is really insightful question. When she was first introduced, she was written as a imaginary quote-unquote guardian angel type of character because Greg was by himself in the series and he needed somebody to bounce ideas off of. So she was written to be ambiguously imaginary at first. The joke would have been that Greg has an imaginary friend that hates him. He's so emo that his imaginary friend can't stand being around him. And she vanishes at times when he really needs her. So he would write in his diary, right? The joke was that he wrote in his diary, and he asks, hey, are you ever gonna read my diary? Where have you been all these years? And she's just not interested. Fine. And then as the strip went on, I started thinking, no, she's too interesting. I want her to be a part of this real world. So now there's all these other characters that can quote unquote see her and interact with her. Are they imaginary too? Is all of this happening in Greg's head? Is he in a hospital room attached to, you know, some wires and this is all a dream of his? Probably not. But if you wanna believe that, you're free to. At the end of volume 1, Xavier calls him her imaginary friend. So I answered this at one point, I think, or somebody guessed. The basic answer is that they are imaginary friends in the sense of their friendship is imaginary. She still cannot stand him, but for reasons that someday I'll get into. It's a really good story. I've basically written it, I just don't know where to fit it into the story. They are friends in the utilitarian sense. They hang out all the time, they talk all the time. Somehow she ends up, she seems to have a key to his house or something. She just walks into his apartment or house, and vice versa. They're close, but she seems to not be able, she can't stand him. He's too much of a milquetoast. You gotta look that term up, it's really funny. He's too fuddy-duddy, and she's such a strong personality. So she can't stand him, he can't stand her because she's not... Oh, just got another question. He wants something else. Let's say in a relationship kind of thing. Like they would... I couldn't imagine them in a relationship. They would hate each other. But he wants her to be somebody she's not, let's say, if he wanted a relationship. So it's just not possible, I don't think. I think there's another question about this in a second, so I'll skip that. But let me make sure I answered the question. Why did I change her from being imaginary to real? I guess I left it ambiguous enough, and thank God I did. I want her to be real. I think it's more interesting for her to be real. and the imaginary friend thing is just a literal word play, because that was how I salvaged the problem. She can't stand him. Their friendship is imaginary. But please do keep an eye on their relationship. And I mean relationship in the broad sense, because I think their friendship and how they became friends and why they're still friends is, at least to me, very interesting. And I'm really looking forward to telling that one. It might be like a thing that I add, like one of those short stories I add to the end of a volume. It's too long to tell in strip form. Marken asks, is Greg supposed to be you, or is he just an original character? I might have answered this one in the past. I'll just be quick. He shares a lot of my characteristics, in the same way that Charlie Brown sort of was the avatar of Charles Schultz on Peanuts. But Greg is very much his own character. He has a lot of my DNA, if that makes sense. But that was so that he could be more richly written, not because I'm trying to put myself in a strip. I think that's probably... I can't think of many strips where I like that. I don't like reading a strip where a writer is like, oh, this is me, this is my life, and I'm a character in this imaginary world. It's kind of like, hey, ta-da, look at me, I'm special, which I find really annoying. I don't want to be that kind of person. I want all the characters to be their own characters. Trinity 1-3 asks, what program do you use for making comics? They look extremely great every time I see them, and since I finally got a PC and drawing board, I'm inspired to do comics as well. To be honest, I feel that your art beats many artists that are in the top. Thank you, you blessed creature you. You just haven't gotten much attention, and I wish you to continue doing these freaking amazing comics. It's so nice. It's just practice, by the way. I have been doing this for long enough that if I wasn't considered, or if I didn't consider myself good, quote unquote, I would just be like, why am I doing this? It's like with music. I really want to be able to play the guitar, but I don't practice, so I shouldn't expect to be good at it. What program do I use? Photoshop, mostly. I used to use Photoshop CS2. I recently upgraded, in air quotes, to CS6. I refuse to buy Photoshop CC or anything above it, because I think paying for software on a subscription model is disgusting. So don't feel bad if you can only use a lower version of Photoshop. I don't think there are enough changes to make a difference. If you can get an older version, if you could buy an older version, do it for cheap. Don't pay for it in the subscription model if you can. I also hear GIMP is a good substitute for Photoshop. Even in Photoshop, I mostly only use the pencil tool and round brushes, and layers, so you can get that feature in any software. I don't think I'm doing anything special with it. And then of course I'm using pen and pencils, which I'll put some footage in here somewhere in the video. I don't think the tools are anything special. They're not really a great substitute for just raw practice. If you do anything long enough, I always say I believe in the 10,000 hour rule. If you do anything for 10,000 hours or less, you're gonna basically master it. So keep at it. I do wish you a lot of luck, and feel free to show me some of your comics when you're ready. I just noticed there was another comment underneath that from the same person. Thank you for inspiring me. I'll try making a decent comic over the summer, and let's see how it goes. Okay. There's something there about feedback that I want to comment on. I used to teach art. I mean, I still do and still can, but it's not really my primary job. even back then, the biggest thing that I wanted to pass on to people who were learning, at least when I was learning, this was important to me. I would advise, please don't worry about what other people think of your comic. Like, if you show it to me, please don't expect my answer to inspire you or give you feedback like, oh, you should work on your characters' faces or something. The most important things in comics, I'll have to do a whole series on this, I think, is clarity. Are you telling your story clearly? Is the ideas behind it being communicated? You can draw fairly badly, in air quotes, and still tell a great story. I always say Jeffrey Brown is a good example of that. He's not a good artist, or he wasn't, but his stories were really well told. So his comics were good. So please, if you show me your stuff, don't get hung up on my reaction to like the art or something. Instead, focus on just telling a good story that will make your readers interested. And if you keep doing that, you will eventually... I can't even be like, oh, you'll get to where I am, because I'm nowhere. Good luck. But yeah, comics is its own reward. So don't worry about, are you going to be successful or not. I don't think a lot of people can expect to make it in this industry. The reward that you're seeking should be satisfaction in your own work, which you can achieve even right now while you're training. Strip number 497. Tiber Hade says, "Am I the only one that hates her?" Meaning Francine. No, you are not. Lots of people tell me that. That's okay. Mr. Marcello asks, "I'm not asking if you are going to do it, but is it even possible for Greg and Xavier to end up together? Not asking if, but if it will, but if it could happen." I guess that's an imaginary friend question, which I guess I answered. It is possible, they're both human. How much of your comics contain actual events that happened to you, and how much is it just things that you came up with? It's a blend of things. I always look to real life as opportunities to twist a story out of something that maybe isn't funny or can be funnier. So basically it's like storytelling is like holding your antenna up as often as you can. So a writer or an artist is always looking for the next idea. I always travel with pencil and paper, for example, because if I'm just sitting somewhere and an idea pops into my head, I'm able to write it down. And some ideas, the more I write of them, the more comes out of them. So for right now, there's a story going on where Greg picks up Duncan and Francine at the airport, which was a lot shorter at first. The idea was just that... I wish I could turn off those sounds. Are you guys hearing those? Greg was going to pick up Duncan and Francine at the airport because the joke was that Fred and Duncan's brothers are not there for him when he needs to be picked up, but Greg is. Even though it's the middle of the night, he comes and gets them. But then all these other ideas kept popping into my head as I was writing that script down. So as I'm typing, I always type a script out first. The script kept getting longer and longer until there was this explosively funny idea that by the time you see this, maybe it'll get started. This explosive idea popped into my head, which is something I've always wanted to do, but I needed an opportunity. And so really my favorite stories kind of emerge from just writing down one or two ideas. And just as I'm typing, I just keep typing. Oh, this would be funny. Let's keep adding to this, like that. And if you've been following along with the coffee method, as shown in these videos, hey, look, it's a mug of Probl-o-Matic characters. It's my first mug, available through a site called Redbubble. Link will be below. And there's a bunch of little art or illustrations and little pieces of art that you can get printed on not only mugs, t-shirts. I'll show a few images here of the kind of things you can get. If you want to support the strip, that's a really great way to do it. You know, people see you drinking out of the mug and they'll say, hey, what's that? And you can tell them all about the good news of Probl-o-Matic as you sip your coffee. I can guarantee that your coffee will have plus 20 taste as you drink out of this mug. So if you're looking to min-max your stats, this cup will help you. In addition to the manual pour method, which will give you plus 70 taste. You can impress all your friends, and hey, maybe that special someone in your life, you can finally confess to them how much you like them and coffee using this mug. Don't you want to do that? You can buy one at a low, low price. And of course, there's always Patreon. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video.